Hello and welcome back to Fish and Wales Young Bloggers. Today we're really excited because our local MP Andrew Stephenson is coming in to talk about CAFOD's new campaign, One Climate, One World.
Hopefully we'll be able to ask him a lot of questions and learn a lot of new things. This is Hollis, Maisie and Hannah, and we are CAFOD's Young Bloggers. We would like to thank you for coming and also for everyone else to come. Maisie will now talk to you a little bit about what CAFOD is.
So we don't know how much you know about CAFOD, but at our school it's one of our chosen charities that we support, and it stands for Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, and it looks to improve the lives of the most vulnerable throughout the world. CAFOD's new campaign is One Climate, One World, and we are looking at tackling extreme poverty caused by the effects of climate change. We've chosen to support this campaign to encourage more young people to engage in this ever-growing issue, as not only will it affect those overseas, it will affect our community too.
So it's great to have you here, especially to the run-up of the general elections and the United Nations Climate Conference in Paris. So we're here to encourage you to support the action too. So we'd like to ask you some questions, if that's okay.
That's fine. Climate change is going to affect everyone and everything around us. In line with CAFOD's For the Love of campaign, we have all chosen one thing that we would really miss when affected. What would be yours?
And welcome.
No pressure there.
No pressure. One thing that I would miss. I think I would miss some of the most beautiful landscapes and scenery in the world. A few years back I had the privilege of going to the Maldives. The Maldives is an absolutely amazing, stunning collection of islands in the middle of the ocean, and yet none of them more than a couple of foot above sea level. And the entire country would go with climate change, and there's no way to stop that happening because it's little atolls, small collections of islands, and it just would cease to exist. And the Maldives is one of those places where people want to go on a honeymoon. It's it's a once in a lifetime, absolutely stunning part of the world. And I think to lose things like that, not just for the people who live there who will be displaced, but for the world, that's an incredible thing to allow to happen. Is for something so stunning to disappear.
Anyone else have any questions?
Lily, go on.
Last year, Ed Davey pledged £720 million to help the poor countries to deal with the effects of climate change. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. One thing that actually the political parties are united on, thankfully, in this country is our international aid spending commitment, which is 0.7% of GDP. This year that will work out about £12 billion that we're giving to the poorest countries in the world to help them. Not all of that will be spent on climate change, some of it will be spent on education projects, health projects, but I think around about 3.8 billion is going to be spent on directly looking at climate change issues, helping countries mitigate the effects of climate change, but also how we can ensure that they are seeing green growth and how they are not becoming polluters themselves. I went to a UN conference in Bangladesh 2 years ago, and again Bangladesh is one of those countries that will be most adversely affected by climate change. It's got some of the poorest people in the world in it, but also the country is not very far above sea level. Large parts of it already flood, and if we just see a small rise in global temperatures, huge, millions of people in Bangladesh will be displaced and be made homeless. So this is a massive issue. We need to tackle it both nationally, across the European level and internationally, and therefore I'm pleased that in the UK you do have a cross-party consensus in supporting our international aid budget and the work to tackle climate change.
Next. Go on.
What will you do to speak out for the poorest and most vulnerable people around the world?
Well, I've always been quite keen on international development and the difference that our spending abroad can make. We are a very wealthy country. There are lots of complaints about things in the UK that need fixing. Lots of people come to me every day asking for more spending on this, more spending on that. But we have to accept that in this country we are incredibly fortunate. We are a very wealthy, developed country, and I think we should give a small percentage of our money abroad to help with these wider projects. I've worked with the Fund for Refugees in Srebrenica. That was part of, obviously, the only part of Europe where there's been a genocide since the Second World War. I was helping Bosniak Muslim families return to the villages around Srebrenica when most of the men there, 8,000 Muslim men and boys, were ethnically cleansed in a 48-hour period. So I did work with the Fund for Refugees in the past. I've also taught English in a school in Bangladesh for a week. I've been out, and that was quite a humbling experience because I quite often, I'm visiting 3 schools in Pendle today, and most of the schools will take the opportunity to lobby me about they need this improvement to their facilities or that improvement, and they're things I'm really keen to see happen. But similarly, when I was in Bangladesh, my class size on a morning, I taught 160 children on a morning, and I taught 150 children on an afternoon. And there were 40 street children looking through the bars or the windows trying to follow the lesson as well. And the school had no electricity or running water. And that's the kind of disparity we've got in this world. We're complaining about an odd draft, and yet over there, massive, massive challenges. And it's only through education, health, ensuring that climate change doesn't destroy huge swathes of this country and make living impossible. We've got to work together globally to empower the world's poorest and to help global development.
As Pendle's MP, you work very hard for our community, especially for local businesses. Do you think you could engage our community to reduce carbon emissions both at home and at work?
Definitely, and I think it's in all of our interests. We've got some companies locally here, like Kirk Environmental in Nelson, who they're global leaders in biogas technology and things, and recycling waste and turning it into energy, and so we've got some really pioneering companies locally, and they have gone from strength to strength in recent years. It used to be quite a small company. They're now exporting globally. They've got a huge number of staff now in Nelson. So this is all in all of our interests. It's not just in the interest of our planet, but over the past 5 years we've actually seen 200,000 more green jobs created. And you can see that locally with people working in solar, people working in wind, people working in biogas. There's a huge range of new job opportunities coming up for young people who want to get involved. So it really is in our interest, and I'm pleased again. If you scroll back a few years, particularly when I was growing up, I can think probably only one house that I knew of that had solar panels on, and that's because the owners were a bit weird. Whereas now, everybody's got solar panels because the regulations have been changed, the cost of the panels has come down, the feed-in tariffs has been put in. So we've got a much better situation where now actually it makes perfect sense to have solar panels on your house. And we've got thousands of properties across Pendle. If you go on hill and look now at Pendle from the right angle, you will see them all glittering away, and I think that's great. And it's huge progress that's been made. So I will keep on doing everything I can to encourage people to go green because it's in all of our interests.
What will you do to make tackling climate change a priority to prevent it pushing people deeper into poverty?
I think it's about continuing to work together. All of us can make a difference to climate change, whether it be individually recycling things or the individual choices we make, or in our schools. And a lot of our local schools have become eco schools, or gone down different environmental kind of projects. At a national level, we really do need to, I think, keep the consensus over working together to tackle climate change and supporting our international aid budget. There is a lot of pressure, particularly at election time. We're 62 days away from general election, and lots of people do come to my surgeries, or I speak to them on the doorstep, and they say, why are we spending billions and billions of pounds across the globe? It's all going to dictators, they're buying Rolls Royces for their wives. This isn't reaching the poorest people, and we've got to be careful about that, because actually if the money is not correctly spent, then it undermines those of us who believe in it. But I've always been very clear that I am a believer in international aid, in supporting the world's poorest. That's a very personal thing to me, not just because our faith teaches us that, but also my life experience teaches me about the real difference that international aid can make. So I think we just need to continue to push on every front, both lead by example locally, look at what we can do to support local companies that are supporting green jobs, but then nationally really work globally in order to try and sort out these issues, because we are one of the few countries in the world that has kept its international aid commitment. And one thing I noticed very clearly in Bangladesh, when I walked up to address this UN conference, and actually there was a massive round of applause, and it's because I was representing the UK. And people are really proud that when there was the global financial recession in 2008, most countries in the world just stopped their international aid spending or cut it dramatically, a lot cut by 40–50%. The UK said, no, we made a commitment, we're going to increase it. And we've actually increased it by several £billion, and that's why there is a bit of kickback politically, but it's the right thing to do to support the world's poorest. And actually, internationally, it's earned us a lot of friends and a lot of respect, particularly from poorer countries in the world, who say, you know what, the UK said they were going to do it, and they've done it. They haven't taken the easy option, they haven't just cut that for political expediency or whatever, they're still supporting the world's poorest.
Next.
Do you believe that the Tory party recognises climate change as both a national and a global issue? Could you describe any movements they have made to improve our climate?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think all parties have one or two people in it who don't believe in climate change. The Conservative Party has a few people in it who don't believe in climate change, but they are very much in the minority. And David Cameron, when he was leader of the opposition, said that he wanted a Conservative government to be the greenest government ever. I think when you look at things like the fact that the percentage of our electricity coming from renewable sources has doubled over the past 5 years, the number of wind turbines has gone up by 60%. There's a lot of things here where there are tangible improvements on the ground we can see in our own communities, like the solar panels issue. There's these very tangible things, in addition to, yes, the big international agreements that have been made to reduce carbon emissions across the European Union. Of course, we've all got to prepare and get ready for the next big conference in December in Paris. That's really, really important, but there have been some really good agreements already signed at a European level and other levels by this government in order to try and make the world a greener place. We've also, one thing I particularly like, because I helped plant a few of them, as a government we've planted 1 million trees across the country, and that's the first tree planting scheme we've actually had in this country since the 1970s. And it's small things like that, but it's a combination of things. We're introducing a plastic bag tax, 5p a carry bag. There are those kind of things in addition to the much bigger things, and I think it's a combination, but I think this government has been good. It's been difficult, challenging times. We have had constrained financial resources, but I think we've been good at balancing the needs to support the environment, support the world's poorest, and also get our economy moving again, which is important for everyone.
Next one. Okay. Go on.
What made you personally so passionate about what you do for the community?
It started when I was at school, when I was kind of your age. There were always things that I just thought were wrong. And they didn't tend to actually be the global things like climate change. They actually tended to be the more rudimentary things. It was like I didn't like school dinners. I thought they were unhealthy. And at the time I wanted to be a chef. That was my chosen career. It never happened, but I wanted to be a chef. And consequently, I just wanted to change things. So I started working with my teachers and school governors. I became a member of the school council and tried to change things. And that, I found it very rewarding when we could change little things, whether it be an environmental project in the school or improving the school dinners. I went to university, got involved more in student politics, became a local councillor when I was 22. That's the lowest level of kind of elected politics. And it just, for me, it just kind of clicked. I can't remember the point when I decided, I want to become an MP. It's not something I thought about really when I was young, but it just it linked in so well with what I was enjoying doing. So when I was on the council, when I was in my early 20s, I did start to think, you know what, actually, there's a lot of rules here that I still disagree with and I can't change them at this level, I need to go another level higher. So I put myself forward for Parliament when I was 26, the general election came about when I was 29, I was elected to Parliament aged 29, I'm now 34, so I'm ageing rapidly. But I'm still, I'm the 8th youngest MP out of the 650 representatives of all the different parts of the UK. I'm still the 8th youngest MP, so I've achieved a remarkable lot at a young age, and I think that's partly it's just it's come to me naturally. And if you are interested in changing things, and you're passionate about whether it be climate change or international development or whatever, politics is something that affects us all. It affects everything, from the fact whether you can drink fizzy drinks in school or not, or the age you can vote, the age you can vote. Everything's affected by politics. So I think you should really consider politics as a career, and that doesn't mean you have to become like me, I'm an MP, but you can get involved in the community in so many different ways, through church, through community groups, through pressure groups. There's so much information online. If you think the government's getting something horribly wrong, join the campaign and lobby us. If people don't contact us, we can't represent you. And I think CAFOD is a fantastic organisation. And when there was, I think there was a big march in London, people contacted me to say that they had gone on the march and various other things, and what it was the government doing about that. So I remember responding to people then about different aspects of this particular campaign. So, but it's about making your voices heard, because I represent 80,000 people spread across 64 square miles, and I like to think that I stay in touch with people's views, but I physically can't come around and talk to everybody. So people do need to email me, tweet me, Facebook me, harangue me, because otherwise I won't know your views and I won't be able to speak up. And particularly, without being too long-winded, particularly about international development and climate change, because there is a generational divide here. A lot of particularly our grandparents' era, don't really see climate change as an issue. They think international aid spending, all that's a bit wishy-washy. Why are we doing that? I get a lot of pushback from older people about we need to stop spending all this international aid money. The simplistic argument that if we stopped international aid money tomorrow, so we had £12 billion more, just imagine what we could do in the UK. And that argument is heard loud and clear from the older generation. So the younger generation who believe in these things, if you do believe in these things, you need to make your voices heard. Otherwise, you may get proper politicians who just say, you know what, we'll take that 12 billion and we'll spend it on projects in the UK, we'll make ourselves very popular and get ourselves re-elected. And actually, we need to take a wider worldview. We need to think about the poorest in the world. We need to ensure that we don't balance the challenges we have in this country on the backs of the world's poorest.
We've had a great afternoon speaking to Andrew Stephenson, our local MP, and it's been fantastic to hear all the things that he's been doing to help climate change and engaging him with our work.
So we've got Elizabeth from Year 10, Fishermill High School. So how was your morning?
I found it really interesting because our local MP does do a lot for climate change, and he is really committed to it. So it's really interesting to see what he does do.
And also, what have you learnt this morning?
I've learnt that there are a lot of countries overseas where they're very close to being submerged below sea level and being flooded. So it's important that we do something about it for the people that live there and for the people who like to visit it.
On behalf of Fishermill and CAFOD, we personally like to thank Andrew Stephenson for coming in today. It's been a great day.
Thank you guys!